Hello. It is a cold and dreary and sweatshirt kind of day. So I'm in my not particularly fancy sweatshirt, and this is what I look like at work today. Didn't have any court appearances. I'm going to talk for a few minutes while people join us. People are starting to come in. I apologize. The dog is trying very hard to join. He's extraordinarily loving today. He gets very cuddly on rainy days. So as people are coming in, put your questions, comments, concerns in the chat. This functions very much like an in-person town hall. So as questions get asked, as questions come up, the chat essentially functions as if you're filling out note cards and passing them up, or if you had a microphone and pass that up or pass that around. I usually start these events by apologize, try to get this centered a little bit better. I usually start these events by talking for a few minutes about some current events, things that are going on. And then as questions come in, I go ahead and answer those. All totally unscripted. You can ask almost anything you want. There's a few questions I probably won't answer, but almost anything politically related I will answer. Some personal questions may be a little off limits. So let's get started. Today, probably the most festive thing that happened is there's been some drama with the debates. So there are 4 debates they tried to schedule. Each Golden and Poliquin RSVP'd for 3, but it wasn't the same 3, and I've RSVP'd for all 4. So it will be interesting to watch the gentlemen try to wiggle out of each having one-on-one with me, and how they just, somehow have a conflict that come up, or they just can't bring themselves to participate in that debate for some reason. It's going to be interesting to watch them come up with a reason why they can't debate me, because the way that ranked choice voting works is I'm optimistic that I can actually win this year, since Golden and Poliquin both have some real likability issues and some real issues that are sincere, legitimate, and genuine with the way that they've done the job. Both of them have really frustrated people within the party, and neither one of them is particularly liked by the other party. They both are sort of chasing voters from the other party and kind of ignoring independents. And if it's anything like it was in 2018, the voters that are attracted to me are the ones that neither one could get the first time around. So if I am eliminated, if I don't prevail, what's going to happen is they'll need to be appealing to the people who liked me first. And so if they're not showing up at those debates, if they're not participating, if they're not acknowledging my presence, they're really, really, really limiting their ability to get those number 2 and number 3 votes. And that's sort of how ranked choice voting works in a maybe clever way, might be the way to say it, is it makes you start to reach out and say, hey, I've got this in common with this person, and I don't have this in common with this person. If you like these things, you like me. If these are qualities you like about Tiffany, I should probably be your number 2. And if these aren't qualities you like about Tiffany, then maybe the other guy is the better choice for you. So it is interesting to watch them sort of duel with that change in voting, because in 2018 they just pretended ranked choice voting didn't exist. They pretended I didn't exist, and boy, did that throw a monkey wrench in things. And this year they really can't. And if they do, I think either or both parties that pretend that there isn't an independent in the race are going to suffer the consequences. I think there's a pretty substantial chance, particularly if we get a lot of these postcards written right now. We have a lot of people donating 10, 20, 30 postcards they're willing to write to just tell people nicely, hey, please look up my friend Tiffany, who's running to be your congressional rep. Here's her website. Please just give her a look. And that helps get that touch out to people in a way that we hadn't been able to get out in 2018. If we can get out enough of those, if Maine Raising starts going, if even one national news network picks up the campaign and gives me a few minute spot on TV, I think there's a real good chance that I'll win with ranked choice voting. So that makes this just a fascinating race. I'm surprised that it hasn't been picked up more by all the pundits, because if you're looking at all the maps, like there's very few maps that are showing like true toss-up races. And this is one of just a handful, like 5 or 6 in the whole country that's a real toss-up that nobody can have a good prediction on. I might be better at predicting it than some of the pundits, because I'm there all the time talking to voters. So it's going to be interesting to see how ranked choice voting plays out. It's going to be very fun to watch both Golden and Poliquin, who have double dog dared the other and talked very loudly about how, you need to debate to face your constituents and to face your voting record, maybe not want to debate me very much. And I don't think I'm a wizard. I don't think I'm the best debater on the planet, but I am a trial attorney. And I know a lot more about law than either Poliquin or Golden does, which is terrifying. We have this incredibly important, incredibly all grown up job that is literally the scaffolding that our country is built upon. It is the rules of our society. And the job interview is a game show where we put forward people that aren't very good at it. They don't really know how to write law. They don't really care about writing law. And in 2018, I was in the TV show 207. For those of you not watching from Maine, 207 is sort of a local quasi talk show. It's not a talk show with an audience. It's got a couple of hosts, and they just ask questions of a variety of folks, people in politics, but also just a variety of things. They cover a lot of stuff. And they said, you've got this very interesting stance. You think that people should read the things they vote on. Sort of shocked they think that wasn't the job, but they said, well, that's, they have people for that. That's outsourced. And if that's the case, then why are we hiring these people for the job? If they don't actually make the law or care about the law, what do? Are they just like people that are basically inflatable people for the money that's behind them? If they don't have any positions or things they care about, I mean, Jared Golden didn't make a single tweet. Not that Twitter's everything, but it's a social media platform that he does use. His account didn't say anything about Labor Day yesterday, and he's supposed to be the all-union boy, right? I mean, I couldn't get the unions to take a second look at me, even though I think that people should be able to organize their labor unions. They didn't even really consider me because they were too busy getting caught up on somebody that's blowing them off. And as far as I'm concerned, I mean, if you don't really stand for anything, what do you have left besides cracking lobster in ads? So we've had a few more people join. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. I'm happy to answer almost any political question. There's a few times I've been asked things where the answer is, I don't know. It's been a while since I've been asked an I don't know question, but they can come up. And you should look for people that occasionally say, I don't know, because nobody knows everything. So if you have somebody who's like, oh, I know the answer to everything, they're probably selling you something that's not true, or they're making stuff up. And we want people that are authentic and real and honest and tell us what they genuinely think. And sometimes the answer is, I don't know, I have to think about that and get back to you. I haven't had any questions yet. I've had a few more people join, though. If you do have questions, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. If you don't, sometimes these are real short. The plan is to do a Tuesday town hall every Tuesday until the election. There is at least one, I think, that might have a debate over it. I'm not sure. So there is one there might be a debate over, although I think that debate may be at 8, so maybe we'll do a town hall right before the debate in the backstage. That would be fun if we can make that happen. I think I might need 1,000 followers to make that happen, though, because I can't live stream from my phone yet. It won't let me do that. The other town hall opportunity that you can talk to me at every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. So early. Every Saturday morning I wake up for you because a lot of times people just really don't have time during the week to ask questions. So I try to give a couple of different town hall type options. And you'll catch me in my PJs, drinking tea with you, just having a morning together. The state is large. This district, top to the bottom, is like 7 hours to drive, partially because there's no direct roads, but it's a long drive top to bottom. And so this gives everyone an opportunity to participate. I also go to a lot of events. I'm going to be at the Rotary in Bangor in October, for example. So I've been at a lot of littler events, bigger events. I try to make it to most of the fairs. This last weekend, I was at Trailtown Festival in Rangeley. It was just super charming little festival with Bigfoot wandering around. So I try to make it to a lot of stuff. That was the feedback that I'd received this year from folks. They weren't wanting me to put on my own events. They wanted me to go to events that they could find me at and then do something else afterwards so that they weren't taking up a whole afternoon. It's fine. I love doing events like that. It's logistically very convenient. My kids like to go do that stuff. They get to do some of the fun stuff, and I get to run into people there. So if you watch my Twitter, I'll usually post where I am, what I'm doing, and how you can find me. And again, I try to be the most accessible congressional candidate. So I have 2 town halls a week that are digital. Anybody can join. I try to answer as many questions as I can see on Twitter. I don't see every single notification. If I miss you, send me a message. Ask the question again, but I try to get to everybody within a day or so. So far, I'm successful. If I do start getting a lot more press, it may have to slow down just a little bit. Please don't take it personally. There's about 540,000 voters in the 2nd Congressional District, and I just can't get to 540,000 questions at a time. But luckily, not that many people have been asking at the same time. For those of you who joined, we had a couple more people join. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. I'm happy to answer just about anything you've got. We're just going over ways that you can reach me. And this might be a short town hall. I suspect it will. This was back to school day for an awful lot of parents. So I bet there are an awful lot of us that are a little bit zombie today. Boy, I didn't get enough sleep last night. Plus the weather's kind of ucky and gloomy, and just, it's an early night, I think, for a lot of us. So 2 digital town halls, events pretty much every weekend and also during the weeks. I'm RSVP'd for all 4 debates. Let's see if the 4 debates actually occur. I suspect there might only be 2, but I would love to get the TV time of the other 2. Even though I'm not particularly photogenic, I can acknowledge that about myself. I used to be cute when I was younger, and now I'm just middle-aged mom, and that's fine. Bonnie has asked, what are my thoughts on voter privacy laws? Bonnie, I might need you to be a little bit more specific. When you're talking about voters' privacy laws, are you talking about whether or not the states sell your information, or whether or not you have to have ID? There's a lot of different voter privacy issues. For example, I bought the voter database this year. I ponied up the $1,100. Really, I'm so cheap on that kind of stuff. I'm a very frugal person, so it's painful to me to pay for that. I think that should be available to candidates at no charge, or a minimal charge. Maybe the charge of postage or copies, or the amount of time it takes, not the amount of records it is. I think that, first of all, our voter database in the state of Maine is kind of gunky. There's a lot of stuff in there that isn't great. Going through it, boy, there's a lot of stuff in there that needs to be updated. Maine has kind of some decent laws around voter privacy. Not everything is published in that database. You can't get access to everything. I don't like that you really don't have a way to opt out of your phone number being purchased. That really bothers me. I think that we should have, I don't know about you, but the amount of texts I get in any given week from campaigns, not even in Maine, because they get the phone numbers and then they put them in their database and they give them to other campaigns or sell them to other campaigns, especially with the parties. I have gotten, I'm sure Mark Kelly is probably a very nice human being to have dinner with, but his campaign texts me like 6 times a week trying to get me to give them money. And I'm not in Arizona. Why are you sending me this request? I've never given money to anybody for any political campaign ever. The only time I've ever made a single contribution to a political campaign was my own, because I didn't want to have to ask people for money for that. And it is just astonishing the amount of requests I get that I know came off of the state data voter base. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, Bonnie, because I didn't get a follow-up to that question. But I do think that we should be a little bit more private with some of our voter data. That said, we need to balance that with transparency as well, because right, wrong, or indifferent, sorry, I'm losing one of my hairpins. Right, wrong, or indifferent, unfortunately, the political parties have found it advantageous that if they don't like the results on something, they just, instead of sucking it up and saying, well, I didn't win, they've taken the stance that, it wasn't fair, there was fraud, there was cheating, oh my gosh, I couldn't possibly have lost, everybody loves me. And maybe these people just had weird parents who think that everybody loves them and they couldn't possibly lose. But Unfortunately, because of that, we have to have a little bit more transparency and auditing with a lot of our voter data. I am worried that it's going to be used to harass voters. Some of the tactics that we've seen, actually from the Democratic Party, I've seen some just creepy ads over the last 4 years. Like, I've gotten postcards that, are customized to me and tell me who's voted of my neighbors, and I'd better vote because they're voting. Just creepy mailers that don't belong in politics, and they're icky. So I don't know what the balancing act is. I know that a lot of it is probably not going to be federal, which is unfortunate. I do think that we should have a constitutional amendment for giving everyone the guaranteed right to vote. I don't think we should be able to disenfranchise people. There is just way, and for those of you who don't know what disenfranchise means, taking a voter's rights away. So in Maine, you can't get disenfranchised. You have to move or tell them you don't want to vote anymore. So if you go to jail, you don't lose your right to vote. Maine's constitution guarantees a right to vote. The federal constitution does not in the same way that Maine's does, for example. And so across the country, it's been very popular for decades for groups that you don't want to vote for whatever reason to make dramatic criminal charges out of perhaps not as dramatic of things, so that those folks can't vote. They lose their right to vote. And I think a lot of people haven't really considered how that might apply to them. But for example, with Roe getting overturned, most of these things about abortions are felonies. And in a lot of states, that means you either lose your right to vote indefinitely, or you lose your right to vote for a period of time while you're incarcerated and or on probation after incarceration. Maine has probation. We don't have some of the other release things that other states have, where you serve a sentence differently. But in a lot of states, you can lose your right to vote. And that is sort of tied together with privacy, but not quite privacy. That's more making sure that your rights are supported. I am concerned with the polarization of our country, that, any woman who assists or could have assisted or mentioned the word abortion in a way that somebody who got an abortion is taking his assistance. I mean, you can get rid of a phenomenal amount of people's voting rights by just slapping them all with felonies, whether or not they serve jail time associated with those felonies. And then suddenly the only people that vote are the people who agree with you. And that is just incredibly not okay. So I do think that we need to protect our right to vote constitutionally. And part of that might be making sure that there is some privacy afforded to people who are voting. Again, that balancing act between privacy and transparency is a lot. And I don't think that our government has done a very good job about it. I don't know if any other questions besides the one I had from Bonnie. A few folks have come in and gone out. So if you have any questions, I'll talk for a couple more minutes. I'm happy to answer them. If you have a question, please put it in the chat. And I'm happy to answer whatever you have. I usually make sure I talk for at least 15 or 20 minutes, even if I don't have a lot of questions. Sometimes I have a lot of questions and we go for an hour. That doesn't seem like this evening, but again, if you're in Maine, it's kind of gloomy today. First day of school for a lot of kids. Certainly the first day of school for my children. So I think a lot of people are maybe not at their A game, and they're maybe at their C+ game this evening. So yeah, you'll see me around events on weekends, these digital events that we have. See me on Twitter. You can email me. If you'd like to volunteer, we are having folks volunteer by a range of options, but kind of the new exciting option is if you'd like to write out a few postcards. People are starting at 10. I've got an awful lot of people doing 10. That's great. That really helps the campaign. Handwritten postcards where you donate the postcards and the postage, donate your time writing. I provide addresses and names. I try to match addresses and names to towns that folks have connections to. So if you are in Maine and say you live in Belfast, I'll ask you if you want to write to neighbors and check that off the list so that it's something familiar. If you don't know anybody, then it's just a festive surprise. So anybody can write those, it's great. And it's a really low dollar low effort way to volunteer. Writing out 10 postcards is just a few minutes of time. It's very inexpensive. Postcards and postage all in, you're probably at like maybe $1 a postcard if you want to do 5 or 10 of those. That's a great way to volunteer. We have a lot of other opportunities coming on. If you are good at making videos, we're going to have some Maine raising videos coming up. I would love to see how creative and interesting you get with that. And we'll keep doing these events. Like I said, we're going to talk about current events, the format going forward, current events. They may be, the Tuesday ones may become a little bit more structured. The Saturday ones are always going to be super casual. I am just not conscious enough on Saturday mornings to make those super structured, and I am very forthright about that. So we're probably going to have more thematic talks after maybe this week or next week for the town halls. Probably try and line it up to where current events are going, but if we're unable to line it up to current events, we'll probably pick a topic. I'll try not to have it be infrastructure week where it's infrastructure for like 6 weeks in a row, because that's a bother. If there's anything else you need from me, you know where to find me. I'm going to go ahead and call it for the evening. I hope you have a great night. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you're not too soggy if you're out there. Have a good one, and I will see you on Saturday.